Welcome back, pop culture junkies. Look at the global music industry in 2026. Every single rising star is chasing the exact same ghost. But can anyone actually dethrone the ultimate kings? We've seen viral hits and massive tours from others, yet the gap just keeps getting wider. What makes this 7-member powerhouse an absolute impenetrable fortress? Is it just blind luck or a flawless masterclass in global domination? Why do even the harshest critics eventually admit defeat and bow down? Prepare your minds as we uncover the hidden secrets behind the ultimate throne. We proudly present the Unbreakable Wall, 7 reasons why catching up to BTS in 2026 is impossible.
Number 7. RM's Mastermind Blueprint, Unbeatable. Picture the music industry right now as a brutally competitive giant global chessboard where most groups out there are merely playing with pawns, desperately hoping a catchy hook, a manufactured scandal, or a viral 15-second TikTok dance challenge will magically crown them as the new kings of pop. But here is the cold, hard, unvarnished reality, guys. BTS is playing 4D chess on a board that Kim Namjoon, our very own RM, built entirely from scratch with his bare hands. You see, when we talk about why catching up to this legendary septet in 2026 is literally a pipe dream for any other agency, we have to start at the absolute foundation, the brain, the compass, the indomitable leader. Back in the early 2010s, when Big Hit Entertainment was just a struggling, nearly bankrupt, obscure agency operating out of a cramped, leaky basement studio, visionary founder Bang Si-hyuk didn't build a group around a visual center or a flashy lead dancer. He built his entire empire around a teenage underground rapper known as Runch Randa, a fiercely intelligent kid with a verified IQ of 148 and a burning, undeniable desire to spit harsh truths about a broken society. Fast forward to this monumental year of 2026, and that rebellious teenager has magnificently evolved into a global statesman, a brilliant philosopher king of the modern music era whose influence transcends the simple boundaries of entertainment. Try to name just one other musical group leader in the history of the world who has stood before the United Nations General Assembly not once, but multiple times, delivering spine-tingling, history-making speeches like the iconic Speak Yourself address that literally rewrote the self-love narrative for an entire disenfranchised generation, or who has confidently sat down in the historic Oval Office at the White House to discuss the heavy, real-world issue of anti-Asian hate crimes directly with the President of the United States. You can't name anyone else because that level of prestige simply doesn't exist anywhere else in the industry. RM isn't just writing catchy pop songs to top the Billboard charts. He is painstakingly architecting a massive, intricate, and deeply profound literary and cultural universe. Look back at the revolutionary HYHY, the most beautiful moment in life era, the life-saving Love Yourself series, or the incredibly complex Map of the Soul journey, heavily inspired by the deep psychoanalytical theories of Carl Jung. Other rival entertainment companies frantically try to hire expensive Western songwriters and trend forecasters to artificially fabricate a deep, mysterious storyline for their newly debuted rookies. But the global public isn't stupid. They can smell that corporate inauthenticity from a mile away. RM's pen game, however, is deeply drenched in his own literal sweat, tears, and late-night existential crises, brilliantly turning highly specific Korean societal pressures like the famously brutal, suffocating education system, the intense class divides, or youth unemployment into a deeply universal language of struggle and hope that resonates with a lonely teenager in Brazil just as intensely as it does with an exhausted college student in Tokyo. His linguistic wordplay is absolutely legendary and studied by lyricists worldwide. Take a masterpiece track like Trivia Love, where he effortlessly plays with the complex Korean characters for person, saram, and love, sarang, sliding just one single phonetic stroke to change the entire meaning of existence. Or his masterful poetic verses in the immortal anthem Spring Day, a track that has notoriously and miraculously never left the Korean domestic music charts since its initial release nearly a decade ago. And let's deeply reflect on his critically acclaimed solo ventures like the profoundly introspective masterpiece Indigo or the avant-garde Right Place, Wrong Person, which completely shattered the rigid stereotypical boundaries of what a K-pop idol is ever allowed to be. By collaborating with absolute legendary figures and underground pioneers like Erykah Badu, Anderson .Paak, and Tableau, he proves time and time again that he commands immense respect across all conceivable genres and international borders, functioning far more like a seasoned visionary maestro than a typical manufactured pop star. Beyond the recording booth, he is an incredibly avid art collector and a generous patron, possessing such immense cultural gravity that he is single-handedly credited with reviving mainstream interest in modern Korean art museums just by casually posting a quiet, reflective picture on his Instagram account, sparking a global cultural phenomenon affectionately known and practiced worldwide as namjuning. This unprecedented level of cultural soft power is frankly unfathomable and deeply terrifying to any competitors hoping to steal their crown. Furthermore, we absolutely must talk about the incredibly heavy, invisible burden of the crown he has worn for over a decade. In the intense crucible of 2018, when BTS was first breaking through the historically xenophobic and terrifyingly massive Western mainstream, and the sheer unprecedented pressure was suffocating them to the heartbreaking point of genuinely considering disbandment, it was RM who firmly held the crumbling pillars of the group together. He valiantly took the brunt of the harsh media scrutiny, tirelessly translating sometimes ridiculous, condescending, or invasive questions on live American television, fiercely shielding his younger brothers while simultaneously formulating profoundly intelligent, diplomatic answers entirely on the spot. That kind of raw, protective, selfless leadership cannot ever be manufactured in a sterile corporate idol training camp. During the darkest, most isolating days of the global pandemic, his deeply philosophical letters on Weavers and his incredibly raw, unscripted live streams became literal lifelines for millions of struggling fans, offering a deeply empathetic vulnerability that completely transcended the typical transactional parasocial relationship between artist and consumer. When the clock finally struck 2025 and all 7 members joyously reunited after fulfilling their mandatory military duties, the entire global industry held its breath, eagerly waiting for the inevitable drop in popularity that famously plagues every single male group in this highly saturated, fast-paced market. But instead of a slow decline, 2026 witnessed a colossal global earthquake. RM had masterfully orchestrated a reunion comeback so culturally massive and emotionally resonant that it completely redefined the music industry's foundational understanding of longevity and loyalty. While other artists were desperately chasing fleeting hyperspeed TikTok trends to stay barely relevant during their active years, RM had quietly ensured that BTS's legacy was built on an indestructible bedrock of authentic human connection, not the shifting sands of viral hype. The highly anticipated 2026 BTS World Tour wasn't just a series of sold-out stadium concerts. It was a triumphant, deeply emotional victory lap of an unbreakable family that had miraculously survived the fire, guided by a captain who never once abandoned the ship. When you look at the musical landscape today, rival companies are still desperately trying to clone the so-called BTS formula, naively thinking it's simply about perfectly synchronizing 7 handsome guys, giving them a slight hip-hop edge, and throwing millions of dollars at a high-budget music video. They completely miss the actual soul of the machine. The true soul is RM's exhausting midnight studio sessions, his relentless, almost obsessive pursuit of knowledge, and his miraculous ability to take his own deepest insecurities, his darkest shadows, his public persona, and weave them into a magnificent tapestry of lyrics that heal millions of broken hearts. How do you even begin to compete with a leader who casually reads Haruki Murakami, Hermann Hesse, and Albert Camus in his spare time, naturally incorporating their complex existential philosophies into spectacular, stadium-shaking, billboard-topping pop anthems? You simply can't. He has set an impossibly high, almost mythical standard for what a modern musical leader must be, moving light years beyond simply coordinating synchronized group greetings or acting as a passive middleman for management's demands. RM is the ultimate emotional anchor, the brilliant intellectual powerhouse, the main load-bearing pillar of the entire house, and the exact fundamental reason the BTS phenomenon has grown roots deep enough to easily withstand the wildest, most destructive storms of mega fame, making him the absolute ultimate mastermind blueprint that firmly ensures that towering wall around BTS remains absolutely impenetrable, forever shutting out any arrogant wannabe contenders who foolishly think a few million fabricated streams can ever buy this level of profound, authentic, and world-altering historical impact.
Number 6. Jin's silver-voiced anchor, untouchable. Have you ever seriously stopped to wonder what actually happens when the guy who was supposedly hired just for his strikingly handsome face aggressively decides that he wants to completely conquer the global music world with his vocal cords instead? If you want to understand the sheer, terrifying impossibility of any other group dethroning BTS in this explosive year of 2026, you absolutely must look at the astonishing, heavily documented evolution of Kim Seok-jin, because his journey completely destroys the standard K-pop industry playbook. Let's rewind the clock and dive deep into the raw facts. Big Hit Entertainment originally scouted Jin right off the street as he was getting off a bus, simply because he looked like a literal prince stepping out of a romantic manga. He was an acting major at the prestigious Jungkook University. He had absolutely zero background in singing, zero background in hip-hop, and couldn't dance to save his life. In any other normal, factory-produced entertainment company, a trainee like that is permanently shoved into the background, given maybe 1 or 2 generic whisper-quiet lines per song, and instructed to simply smile for the camera as the designated visual. But Seok-jin absolutely refused to be just a pretty face in a fleeting pop group. While the born prodigies of the group were naturally hitting their marks, Jin was famously staying awake until the brutal hours of the early morning, shedding actual blood, sweat, and agonizing tears in the freezing practice rooms, desperately trying to force his vocal cords to do things they were never biologically trained to do. Fast forward to the colossal reality of 2026, and that exact same struggling rookie has miraculously transformed into the undisputed, critically acclaimed silver voice of BTS, a vocal powerhouse whose incredibly stable, soaring live tenor notes have become the absolute emotional bedrock of their monumental stadium tours. Listen closely to the spine-tingling, crystal-clear high notes in legendary tracks like Crystal Snow, the agonizingly beautiful falsettos in Fake Love, or the aggressive rock-infused belting in Dionysus. Vocal coaches worldwide constantly react to his live performances with absolute shock, praising his immense lung capacity, his flawless breath control, and his unique, emotionally piercing tone that cuts directly through the heaviest stadium bass like a razor-sharp diamond. But his vocal supremacy is only half of the terrifying equation that makes him completely irreplaceable. We have to talk about the profound psychological role he plays within the fiercely loyal dynamic of the 7 members. In traditional, highly conservative Korean culture, age dictates everything. The oldest member typically commands strict, unquestioning obedience and creates a rigid hierarchy. Jin, as the eldest or the matne, the oldest who acts like the youngest, actively and deliberately shattered that toxic cultural norm. Instead of ruling with an iron fist, he cooked massive meals for his younger brothers, personally drove a teenage Jungkook to his high school classes, and intentionally played the goofy, self-deprecating fool on global television just to absorb the crushing, suffocating pressure of their unprecedented worldwide fame so the younger members could breathe. Try to find another group in 2026 where the oldest, most visually celebrated member completely sacrifices his own ego to become the emotional shock absorber for the rest of the team. You can't, because that level of pure, unadulterated emotional intelligence is a once-in-a-generation anomaly. And then there is the historic, monumental shift of his military enlistment. Let's be brutally honest about the climate in late 2022. The entire nation of South Korea was locked in a vicious, exhausting political war over whether BTS should be granted a military exemption, and the toxic public scrutiny was actively tearing the members apart. What did Jin do? He bravely stepped up to the firing line, decisively canceled his own enlistment postponement, gifted the fans the beautifully heartbreaking Coldplay-produced masterpiece The Astronaut as a temporary goodbye, and marched straight into the freezing, brutally cold Yenshan boot camp with a freshly shaved head and a reassuring smile. He took the very first bullet. He absorbed the absolute worst of the media shockwave, brilliantly paving a smooth, safe road for the other 6 members to follow. When he triumphantly returned in 2024, the entire industry was desperately holding its breath, waiting to see if the notorious military hiatus curse had finally broken BTS's momentum. Instead, Jin completely paralyzed the global internet. He didn't just casually return, he instantly dominated massive brand campaigns, conquered international variety shows, carried the prestigious Olympic torch, and fiercely held the BTS banner sky high all by himself, definitively proving to the entire world that a military hiatus is an absolute myth when you operate at the god-tier level of Kim Sok-jin. Now, in 2026, as the magnificently reunited septet absolutely vaporizes streaming records and sells out colossal multi-continent stadium tours in mere seconds, Jin stands at the center of the stage as the ultimate testament to unstoppable human willpower. He brilliantly weaponized his own initial weaknesses, transforming them into devastating strengths, while simultaneously inventing the brilliant, self-aware, global trending, worldwide handsome marketing persona that keeps the general public completely wrapped around his finger. Rival agencies debut dozens of incredibly handsome boys every single month, desperately hoping to manufacture the next global visual icon. But can any of their perfectly polished rookies effortlessly belt a flawless triple high note to 80,000 screaming fans at Wembley, seamlessly transition into a brilliantly timed, tension-breaking dad joke that goes viral in 50 different countries, and single-handedly act as the unbreakable psychological glue for the biggest musical act in human history? Absolutely not. Catching up to that impossible standard of relentless self-improvement, staggering vocal evolution, and selfless, egoless leadership isn't just difficult for the rookies of 2026, it is a permanent, impenetrable wall that they will forever crash against.
Number 5. Suga's unforgiving pen, Untamed. Let us take a brutally honest, unflinching look into the deeply sanitized, hyper-manufactured corporate boardrooms of rival entertainment agencies in 2026, where dozens of desperate executives are sitting around massive glass tables, fiercely debating how to genetically engineer the ultimate edgy rapper for their brand-new rookie boy groups, buying them the most expensive designer streetwear, teaching them how to perfectly scowl at the camera, and hiring top-tier Western ghostwriters to pen artificial lyrics about imaginary struggles and fake flexes. But here is the chilling, insurmountable reality that completely shatters their pathetic illusions. You can absolutely never, ever manufacture a Min Yoongi. If we are genuinely dissecting the impenetrable fortress-like wall that BTS has built around themselves by this monumental year of 2026, we have to talk about the bleeding, scarred, and fiercely independent soul of the group, a man who literally clawed his way out of the suffocating depths of poverty in Daegu to stand at the absolute pinnacle of the global music industry. Before the sold-out stadiums, before the Grammy nominations, and long before the billions of streams, there was just an underground hip-hop kid named Gloss, a fiercely ambitious teenager who was desperately selling his self-produced beats on the street for mere pennies, facing the soul-crushing daily dilemma of choosing whether to spend his last few thousand won on a cheap bowl of jjajangmyeon to stop the agonizing hunger pains, which meant he would have to walk 2 exhausting hours back home in the freezing dark, or taking the bus and going to sleep with an empty, aching stomach. This is not some tragically romanticized backstory carefully typed up by a slick PR department to gain sympathy point from teenage fans. This is the raw, gritty survivalist DNA of Suga, and it is exactly why his words cut through the superficial noise of the industry like a serrated hunting knife. How do you even begin to compete with an artist whose foundational drive was literally forged in the fires of starvation and societal rejection? You can't. And then we have to talk about the physical and mental blood he spilled to build this empire, specifically the infamous, horrifying motorcycle accident during his pre-debut days when he was secretly working a dangerous, illegal delivery job just to pay his school tuition, resulting in a completely shattered shoulder that he desperately hid from Big Hit Entertainment out of pure, paralyzing terror that they would immediately kick him out of the debut lineup. He endured years of agonizing, mind-numbing pain, silently popping painkillers in the dark corners of waiting rooms just to perfectly execute BTS's notoriously grueling, high-intensity choreography, all while simultaneously carrying the massive, invisible burden of severe depression, OCD, and debilitating social phobia. When he finally unleashed his ferocious alter ego, Augusty, upon the unsuspecting world, he completely obliterated the toxic, pristine illusion of the perfect K-pop idol by dropping critically acclaimed mixtapes that functioned as deeply invasive, raw, open heart surgeries, with tracks like The Last and Amygdala, where he fearlessly exposed his deepest psychological traumas, his psychiatric treatments, and his darkest suicidal thoughts to millions of people. By doing so, he didn't just break records, he literally saved thousands of human lives, fundamentally rewiring the entire parasocial relationship between artist and fan into a profound, unbreakable bond of shared trauma and mutual healing. Rival groups in 2026 are still heavily restricted by their overbearing management, strictly forbidden from talking about politics or mental health, while Suga has spent the last decade violently tearing down those exact walls with his bare hands. Furthermore, his terrifying dominance isn't just confined to a microphone. He is Min PD, a ridiculously prolific, heavily decorated, and universally respected genius producer who has become the absolute ultimate hitmaker for the global elite, seamlessly collaborating with massive industry titans like IU on the nostalgic masterpiece 8, Psy on the explosive viral anthem That, Halsey on the deeply introspective Suga's Interlude, and even the late Juice WRLD, proving that his musical genius effortlessly transcends language barriers and genre constraints. When he embarked on his monumental, historic D-Day solo world tour right before his mandatory alternative military service, a service he had to complete as a social worker precisely because of that exact historic shoulder injury, he didn't just hold concerts, he held massive, stadium-level religious awakenings, proving that just one single member of BTS possesses enough global drawing power, sheer stage presence, and dedicated fandom loyalty to completely eclipse the combined efforts of entire rival groups. Fast forward to the epic OT7 reunion of 2026, and Suga has triumphantly returned from his public service not just as a hardened veteran, but as a deeply mature, healed, and remarkably grounded anchor for the group, casually bringing his acoustic guitar adorned with the loving messages of his members and an even sharper, more refined producing pen to the studio. He is the fiercely protective older brother who aggressively calls out industry corruption, the genius architect who builds the sonic landscapes of their most emotional anthems, and the living, breathing embodiment of the phrase, "Started from the bottom, now we're here." When the rookies of 2026 look up at the towering, impenetrable fortress of BTS, they aren't just looking at perfectly synchronized dancers. They are looking directly at Min Yoongi, an immovable mountain of musical integrity, a man who has already survived the absolute darkest, most terrifying abysses of human suffering and emerged holding the undisputed crown, making his razor-sharp pen and untamed spirit an absolute, undeniable reason why catching up to this legendary group will forever remain a foolish, laughable impossibility.
Number 4. J-Hope's unrivaled stage command. Electrifying. Let us take a profoundly deep, electrifying dive into the absolute physical and spiritual heartbeat of this entire legendary septet. Because if you are genuinely trying to comprehend why the colossal walls surrounding BTS in this explosive year of 2026 remains utterly impenetrable to the rest of the industry, you absolutely must stare directly into the blinding, ferocious sun that is Jungkook. When you look at the intensely competitive landscape of global music right now, the scene is completely saturated with spectacular, high-octane 4th and 5th generation performance groups who execute incredibly aggressive, acrobatic choreography with terrifying military-level precision, fiercely boasting mind-blowing synchronization and desperately fighting to claim the title of the best performers in the world. But here is the monumental, undeniable difference that instantly separates the absolute kings from the incredibly talented princes. None of those rival groups have a dance captain who possesses the sheer, raw, unadulterated street dance pedigree and soul-crushing stage presence of J-Hope. To truly understand this terrifying gap in skill and aura, we have to completely rewind the clock back to the gritty, underground street dance battles of Gwangju, long before the blinding stadium lights in the multi-million-dollar music videos, where a young, fiercely determined prodigy known in the underground scene as Smile Hoya was already winning brutal national dance competitions and completely dominating the renowned Neuron dance crew. Big Hit Entertainment didn't just recruit a trainee to teach him how to count 8 beats. They actively recruited a legitimate, highly respected underground street legend and cleverly built the entire performance foundation of their risky new hip-hop group directly upon his incredibly capable, rhythm-infused shoulders. In the highly sanitized, heavily manufactured idol factory system, where agencies forcefully dictate every single micro-expression and hand gesture, J-Hope brings a visceral, pulsating, authentic street groove that literally cannot be taught in a corporate dance studio. A raw, undeniable musicality that flows through his veins and effortlessly translates into the notoriously complex, lung-busting choreographies of monumental masterpieces like Mic Drop, Black Swan, and On. But his terrifying dominance extends far, far beyond his own physical movements. We absolutely must talk about his legendary, deeply respected, and frankly, slightly terrifying role as the official choreography leader of BTS. In the grueling, windowless practice rooms, the cheerful, heart-shaped smile completely vanishes, instantly replaced by the intense, hawk-like gaze of a relentless perfectionist who can effortlessly spot a single member's pinky finger being half an inch out of formation from all the way across the room in the mirror, demanding absolutely flawless execution while simultaneously acting as the critical, life-saving emotional bridge between the older Hyung line and the younger Maknae line. He is the iron-willed disciplinarian who ensures that even after a decade of unimaginable wealth and unprecedented global fame, BTS never ever slacks off on stage, strictly maintaining the exact same hungry, desperate, life-or-death rookie energy that originally made the entire world fall in love with them.
If you harbor even a single shred of doubt about his unfathomable world-conquering power as an individual artist, we must permanently cement into the history books the colossal, paradigm-shifting cultural earthquake that was Lollapalooza 2022, affectionately and permanently rebranded by the global masses as Hopiepalooza, where J-Hope bravely stepped out entirely alone, completely stripped of his 6 brothers, to make massive historical waves as the very first South Korean artist to ever headline the main stage of a major United States music festival. Standing before a deafening, terrifying ocean of over 100,000 screaming fans in Chicago, he didn't just perform, he completely commanded the atmosphere for an exhausting, breathless 90 minutes, accompanied by a live rock band, spitting raw, aggressive hip-hop verses from his dark, critically acclaimed, and deeply introspective grunge masterpiece album, Jack in the Box, completely shattering the colorful, bubbly sunshine stereotype and dramatically exposing the intense, complex, and fiercely artistic shadows lurking just beneath his public persona. He single-handedly proved that the individual components of BTS are absolute industry titans in their own right, possessing more sheer stage magnetism and crowd control abilities than entire rival groups combined. And his relentless evolution did not stop there. Instead of resting on his massive laurels before his mandatory military enlistment, he embarked on the profound, deeply personal documentary journey Hope on the Street, physically traveling back to his foundational roots in Osaka, Paris, New York, and Gwangju to beautifully reconnect with legendary street dances, passionately proving to the entire world that despite the billions of streams and the shiny Grammy nominations, his soul is still fundamentally, permanently anchored to the raw, unfiltered essence of street dance. When he valiantly served his country as an elite, highly decorated special class warrior and an incredibly strict assistant drill instructor in the military, completely dominating his physical and mental training, the world patiently waited, knowing exactly what kind of monster was being forged in that crucible. Fast forward to this monumental year of 2026 as the massive, blinding stadium lights finally ignite for the intensely anticipated, emotional OT7 reunion tour. The sheer, undeniable gravity of J-Hope's presence on that stage is the exact reason why this comeback feels completely untouchable by any other act on the planet. He is the ultimate, flawlessly oiled engine driving the spectacular BTS performance machine, expertly fusing the ferocious, razor-sharp precision of his military discipline with the loose, intoxicating, and impossibly cool groove of his underground roots, creating a hypnotic, visual spectacle that leaves veteran choreographers and rival industry executives completely speechless and furiously scribbling useless notes. Catching up to BTS isn't just a matter of buying better songs or hiring more expensive backup dancers. It requires a group to magically possess a completely fearless, insanely talented, and fiercely demanding stage commander like Jungkook, an artist who literally breathes music and dictates the pulse of 80,000 screaming fans with a single flick of his wrist, making him the absolute, undisputed anchor of their live performances and a magnificent, terrifyingly powerful reason why the wall surrounding the kings of pop in 2026 remains a permanent, unbreakable reality.
Number 3. Jimin's hypnotic duality, unmatched. Step into the blinding, fiercely competitive arena of modern pop music in this explosive year of 2026, and you will immediately notice a very specific, desperate trend among rival entertainment companies who are furiously trying to genetically engineer the perfect, all-rounder idol who can simultaneously exude lethal, breathtaking charisma on stage and soft, angelic vulnerability off of it. But here is the cold, terrifying reality that keeps those corporate executives awake at night in a cold sweat. You can hire the most expensive choreographers in the world, you can buy the most extravagant stage outfits, and you can train a rookie for a full decade, but you can absolutely never, ever manufacture the gravity-defying, ethereal essence of Park Ji-min. If we are truly dissecting the impenetrable fortress-like wall that BTS has built around themselves, a wall that remains entirely unbroken by the rest of the industry, we must deeply analyze the staggering hypnotic anomaly that is their main dancer and lead vocalist. To genuinely understand the sheer impossibility of replicating his impact, we have to dramatically rewind the timeline back to his foundational roots in the fiercely proud city of Busan, where a young, breathtakingly talented prodigy made absolute history by entering the prestigious Busan High School of Arts as the top student in the modern dance department, possessing a rare, fluid, classical background that completely contradicted the rigid, aggressive, heavily synchronized hip-hop style that Big Hit Entertainment was desperately trying to build BTS upon. The brutal, heartbreaking truth of his pre-debut days is a story of terrifying survival because his elegant, contemporary dance style clashed so violently with the group's underground rap image. Jeon was notoriously almost kicked out of the final debut lineup a staggering 8 different times, facing the agonizing, daily psychological torment of watching his absolute biggest dream constantly dangling over a terrifying cliff edge. Driven by a sheer, terrifying willpower that borders on superhuman, he famously restricted his sleep to a meager 2 or 3 hours a night, locking himself inside the freezing, dimly lit practice studios until his muscles completely gave out, brutally forcing his body to adapt, evolve, and seamlessly fuse the delicate, breathtaking grace of contemporary ballet with the hard-hitting, ferocious power of urban street hip-hop, ultimately creating a completely, entirely new, unreplicable genre of performance art that belongs entirely to him. Fast forward to the monumental reality of 2026, and that exact same terrified, desperate trainee has triumphantly morphed into the undisputed stage genius of the global music industry, a performer so incredibly mesmerizing that veteran idol dancers from rival groups openly admit to obsessively studying his legendary fan cams just to desperately mimic a fraction of his terrifying stage presence. When you witness the agonizing, haunting beauty of his solo masterpiece, Lie, the sensual, atmospheric perfection of Serendipity, or the incredibly raw, aggressive, and culturally massive fan dance climax of Idol at the Melon Music Awards that literally earned him an official plaque of appreciation from the South Korean government, you are not just watching a pop star dance, you are watching a man completely, willingly allow the music to possess his physical form. But his terrifying dominance is not merely confined to his flawless physical movements. We absolutely must talk about his incredibly unique, gender-busting, crystalline countertenor voice that fundamentally changed the entire sonic landscape of BTS's discography. In an industry heavily saturated with generic, cookie-cutter pop vocals, Jeon's voice slices through the heavy bass lines like a razor-sharp silver blade, instantly recognizable within a single second, providing those absolutely crucial, spine-tingling killing parts in legendary tracks like Blood, Sweat, and Tears and Fake Love that leave the global audience completely breathless. And if you dare to harbor even a single shred of doubt about his colossal, world-conquering power as a standalone individual artist, we must permanently cement into the history books the absolute bloodbath that was the year 2023, a year where Jeon completely shattered the highest glass ceiling in the Western music industry by making unprecedented, staggering history as the very first South Korean solo artist to ever debut at the coveted #1 spot on the notoriously difficult Billboard Hot 100 chart with his intoxicating, synth-pop masterpiece, Like Crazy. With his groundbreaking solo album, Face, he deliberately stripped away the glamorous, untouchable superstar facade, bravely and painfully exposing his deepest, darkest internal struggles with pandemic-induced depression, agonizing isolation, and heavy emotional drinking, confronting his own demons with the ferocious, choir-backed hip-hop anthem Set Me Free Part 2, brilliantly proving that true, unshakable artistry is born entirely from raw, bleeding honesty, rather than manufactured corporate perfection.
During the grueling, physically demanding military hiatus, Jeon bravely enlisted alongside his younger brother Jungkook under the incredibly rare and highly demanding companion deployment system, bravely facing the grueling, freezing artillery training in the notoriously tough 5th Infantry Division, completely shattering the delicate, fragile fairy stereotype permanently and proving his immense physical and mental fortitude. When the massive, blinding stadium lights finally roared back to life for the intensely anticipated, highly emotional OT7 reunion tour in 2026, the sheer, undeniable gravity of Jimin's evolution was absolutely staggering. He returned not just as a flawless performer, but as a deeply mature, lethal, and fiercely confident veteran who commands the breathless attention of 80,000 screaming fans with just a single devastatingly sharp gaze or a subtle, agonizingly perfect sweep of his hair through his hair. He brilliantly balances the terrifying, aggressive stage persona with an offstage personality so incredibly warm, deeply empathetic, and fiercely loyal that he has rightfully earned the title of the group's angel, constantly acting as the critical emotional support system for his fellow members, famously providing a comforting, grounding embrace whenever the crushing, suffocating pressure of their unprecedented global fame becomes too heavy to bear. Rival agencies in 2026 are still pathetically trying to clone his magical duality, naively forcing their rookies to practice making sexy and cute facial expressions in the mirror, entirely missing the profound, foundational truth that Jimin's magnetic aura cannot be taught because it is born entirely from his agonizing history, his literal blood and tears, and his terrifying, beautiful vulnerability. Catching up to the colossal phenomenon of BTS requires a group to magically possess a performer who can effortlessly blur the rigid lines between masculine power and feminine grace, who can casually top the absolute biggest music charts in the world entirely on his own merit, and holds the entire emotional core of the group together with a blinding, heart-stopping smile, making the hypnotic, unmatched duality of Park Ji-min an absolute, permanent, and terrifying reason why the towering wall surrounding these kings of pop will forever remain completely unbroken and utterly impossible to scale.
Number 2. V's baritone magnetism, unstoppable. Let us aggressively pull back the heavy velvet curtain on the absolute most guarded, highly classified secret weapon that Big Hit Entertainment ever possessed. Because if you want to understand why every single rival agency in 2026 is pulling their hair out trying to manufacture the ultimate multi-dimensional idol, you have to stare directly into the deep, soulful, and dangerously intoxicating eyes of Kim Tae-young. To fully grasp the sheer, terrifying magnitude of V's impact on the global music industry, we have to rewind all the way back to the incredibly tense, suffocating pre-debut era, a time when the group was completely formed, but the company made the unprecedented, risky, and frankly agonizing decision to keep this young teenager completely hidden from the public eye as their ultimate trump card. Imagine the devastating psychological torture of being a young kid from Daegu, watching your 6 brothers actively interacting with fans, filming vlogs, and building their dreams, while you are forced to sit silently in the corner, completely invisible to the world, terrified that you might be cut from the final lineup at the very last second. That intense, agonizing period of isolation didn't break him. It forged an incredibly mysterious, utterly magnetic aura that exploded the exact second he was finally revealed to the world with his iconic single word in the debut trailer, instantly proving that he was never just a regular trainee, but a literal ticking time bomb of pure, unadulterated charisma. Fast forward to the monumental, stadium-shaking reality of 2026, and that exact same hidden member has miraculously evolved into the undisputed global icon of stage presence, completely redefining what it means to be a visual center in an industry heavily saturated with perfectly manufactured, cookie-cutter faces. Rival companies literally have designated classes for their rookies specifically dedicated to studying Taeyoung's legendary fan cams, desperately trying to teach them how to replicate his lethal, split-second micro-expressions, his arrogant smirks, and his agonizingly vulnerable gazes, completely failing to realize that his stage genius is not a rehearsed routine, but a raw, instinctual possession by the music itself. But his terrifying dominance extends far beyond his breathtaking, world-renowned visuals. We absolutely must talk about the profound, soul-shaking gravity of his unique, rich baritone voice. In a K-pop landscape notoriously obsessed with forcefully pushing male vocalists into uncomfortably high, piercing tenor ranges, Taeyoung's voice is a dark, luxurious, and heavily textured velvet blanket that completely grounds the entire sonic spectrum of BTS. When you listen to the haunting, theatrical masterpiece Stigma, the incredibly sensual R&B-infused Singularity, or the deeply healing, stadium-echoing anthem Inner Child, you are not just hearing a pop singer, you are experiencing the profound, emotional depth of a classic jazz crooner trapped in the body of a modern superstar. And if you dare to harbor even a single shred of doubt about his absolute, world-conquering power as a standalone individual artist, we must permanently cement into the history books the stunning, paradigm-shifting release of his critically acclaimed solo album, Layover. While other soloists were desperately chasing aggressive, high BPM viral TikTok trends and flashy, explosion-filled music videos, Taeyoung took a massive, incredibly risky detour, deliberately slowing down the entire world with a breathtakingly gorgeous, deeply nostalgic, jazz-infused masterpiece that heavily featured his beloved dog Yeontan, entirely rejecting the toxic, hyper-speed pressure of the modern industry to deliver a completely authentic, incredibly raw piece of his own soul. He proved that true, unshakable global power doesn't come from following the loudest trend, but from forcing the entire world to stop and listen to your own unique, quiet rhythm. And then, we must talk about the absolute most terrifying, jaw-dropping evolution of his entire career, his historic, highly publicized military enlistment. Let's be brutally honest, the global public and the media heavily stereotyped Taeyoung as the delicate, fashion-forward, art museum-loving prince of the group, a global ambassador for Celine who belonged entirely on the high-fashion runways of Paris. But what did he do when the call of duty arrived? He didn't just quietly enlist in a regular administrative unit. He voluntarily applied, passed the notoriously brutal physical and psychological tests, and actively chose to join the incredibly dangerous, highly elite Special Task Force of the Capital Defense Command, an elite anti-terrorism unit heavily focused on high-stakes urban warfare, hostage rescue, and specialized combat. He completely shattered every single delicate stereotype overnight, emerging in devastatingly intimidating black tactical gear, proudly wearing the elite SDT patch and actively participating in grueling, heavily armed anti-terrorism drills that left the entire world and every single rival fandom in a state of absolute, terrified shock. He brilliantly proved that his soft, jazz-loving soul is protected by an incredibly ferocious, ironclad warrior spirit. When the massive, blinding stadium lights finally roared back to life for the intensely anticipated, highly emotional OT7 reunion tour in 2026, the sheer, undeniable gravity of Taeyoung's evolution was absolutely staggering. He returned not just as a flawless performer, but a deeply mature, lethal, and fiercely confident veteran who commands the breathless attention of 80,000 screaming fans with just a single devastatingly sharp gaze or his deep, resonating vocal growl.
He brilliantly balances the terrifying, aggressive stage persona with an off-stage personality so incredibly warm, deeply empathetic, and eccentrically creative that he constantly acts as the unpredictable, wild-card emotional anchor for his fellow members, famously providing a comforting, deeply loyal friendship that entirely transcends the artificial boundaries of a corporate business relationship. Rival agencies in 2026 are still pathetically trying to clone his magical duality, naively forcing their rookies to practice making deep, husky voices while wearing expensive designer suits, entirely missing the profound foundational truth that Taehyung's magnetic aura cannot be taught because it is born entirely from his aggressive history as the hidden secret, his genuine, bleeding love for classic jazz and art, and his terrifying, completely fearless willingness to jump straight out of a Paris Fashion Week directly into an elite counter-terrorism combat unit, making the hypnotic, unmatched baritone magnetism of Kim Taehyung an absolute, permanent, and terrifying reason why the towering walls surrounding these kings of pop will forever remain completely unbroken and utterly impossible for any other group to ever scale.
Number 1. Jungkook's golden omnipotence, unconquerable. Let us finally stand before the absolute pinnacle, the undisputed, terrifyingly perfect ultimate weapon of big hit entertainment. Because if you are still desperately searching for the exact reason why the colossal, impenetrable wall surrounding BTS in this explosive year of 2026 remains completely unbroken by any other group on the planet, you absolutely must face the blinding, unmatched supernova that is Jungkook. To truly comprehend the sheer, staggering impossibility of replicating his existence, we have to completely rewind the clock back to the year 2011, to the chaotic backstage of the Superstar K auditions, where a shy, incredibly introverted middle schooler with large, Bambi-like eyes was suddenly aggressively scouted by 7 different major entertainment agencies, including the absolute largest, wealthiest corporate giants in the entire South Korean industry, who were practically throwing blank checks at his feet. In any normal, logical universe, a young kid would instantly sign with the biggest, safest company to guarantee his debut. But here is the chilling, destiny-altering reality that completely shattered the standard industry playbook. A 15-year-old Jungkook walked into the cramped, dilapidated, nearly bankrupt basement studios of Big Hit Entertainment, saw a teenage Kim Namjoon fiercely spitting underground rap verses, and was so profoundly, deeply mesmerized by RM's raw aura that he instantly rejected every single massive corporate offer just to follow his idol into the dark, terrifying abyss of an uncertain debut. You literally cannot manufacture that kind of pure, instinctual, soul-binding loyalty in a corporate boardroom. Fast forward to the monumental, stadium-shaking reality of 2026, and that exact same terrified, introverted kid who used to quietly cry in the showers because he missed his mother has miraculously evolved into the undisputed, globally feared Golden Maknae, a mythical title he didn't just casually adopt, but one he fiercely earned by literally bleeding on stage for over a decade. Look at the incredibly saturated landscape of rival entertainment companies today. They are desperately, frantically trying to genetically engineer the perfect all-rounder center for their newly debuted rookie groups, pouring millions of dollars into expensive vocal coaches and elite dance academies. But they are all spectacularly failing because they are completely missing the fundamental, agonizing truth. Jungkook wasn't just born talented. His legendary skills were violently forged in the absolute hottest, most punishing crucible of the music industry. He is the terrifyingly flawless main vocalist who easily builds crystal-clear, lung-busting high notes while executing hyper-aggressive acrobatic choreography without missing a single solitary breath. He is the formidable lead dancer who seamlessly matches the terrifying street dance pedigree of J-Hope and the ethereal classical grace of Jimin. And he is the incredibly capable rapper who can effortlessly spit fire on hardcore hip-hop tracks when necessary. But to truly understand his world-conquering, untouchable dominance, we absolutely must talk about the profound psychological role he plays within the fiercely loyal dynamic of the 7 members. He is the literal physical embodiment of BTS's collective soul. When you listen to the agonizing, heartbreaking vulnerability of his deeply personal solo track, Begin, where he openly confesses that he didn't even have his own dreams when he came to Seoul, and that his only true agony was watching his 6 older brothers suffer, you are witnessing a level of profound, selfless empathy that completely transcends the artificial, cutthroat, hyper-competitive nature of the K-pop industry. He absorbed the absolute best qualities of all 6 older members: RM's profound leadership and intellectual depth, Jin's unshakable confidence and silver vocals, Suga's relentless, unforgiving work ethic and producing genius, J-Hope's terrifying stage discipline and street dance pedigree, Jimin's obsessive perfectionism and ethereal grace, and V's magnetic artistry and soulful depth, and flawlessly synthesized them into one single, unstoppable human weapon. Let us deeply analyze his terrifyingly vast arsenal of skills. He is not merely a performer. He is a fiercely independent creative visionary who taught himself how to expertly shoot, direct, and edit professional-grade, deeply emotional documentaries known worldwide as Golden Closet Films, GCF, literally directing the monumental billboard-topping music video for Life Goes On, right in the middle of a terrifying global pandemic, to offer a deeply comforting, healing message to a severely broken world. Look closely at his heavily tattooed right arm. While idol companies strictly forbid body modification to maintain a pristine, easily marketable image, Jungkook proudly, rebelliously tattooed the word army across his knuckles and etched the intricate history of his youth permanently into his skin, aggressively claiming his own identity and fiercely declaring his eternal, unyielding loyalty to the millions of fans who raised him. And if you dare to harbor even a microscopic shred of doubt about his colossal, world-breaking power as a standalone individual artist, we absolutely must permanently cement into the history books the absolute global bloodbath that was his monumental solo debut era in 2023. While other soloists were desperately struggling to chart in single country, Jungkook casually, effortlessly dropped the record-shattering global mega hit 7, completely obliterating Spotify streaming records faster than any male artist in human history, instantly followed by his critically acclaimed all-English pop masterpiece album Golden, which definitively proved to the entire world that he wasn't just a K-pop idol, he was the undisputed, reigning global prince of pop, drawing serious, heavily documented comparisons from veteran Western music critics to absolute legendary titans like Michael Jackson and Justin Timberlake. He didn't just conquer the charts, he completely paralyzed Times Square with a surprise, unannounced guerrilla concert that drew thousands of screaming fans in mere minutes, and he bravely stood alone on the absolute biggest, most terrifying stage on the planet, performing the majestic anthem Dreamers at the monumental opening ceremony of the FIFA World Cup, commanding the breathless attention of literally billions of viewers worldwide without a single drop of sweat. And then we must deeply reflect on the absolute most selfless, heart-wrenching, and fiercely loyal decision of his entire phenomenal career: his military enlistment. Let's be brutally honest. As the youngest member of the group, Jungkook legally had years left before he was required to enlist. He was standing at the absolute, undisputed zenith of his solo career, entirely capable of touring the world and raking in hundreds of millions of dollars all by himself for at least 2 more years. But what did this absolute legend do? He completely sacrificed his own massive, unprecedented solo momentum, bravely shaved his head, and willingly marched straight into the freezing, brutally demanding artillery training of the notoriously tough 5th Infantry Division alongside his brother Jimin under the rigorous companion deployment system, enduring grueling physical combat drills and mind-numbing labor, doing it all for one single, devastatingly beautiful reason: reason to ensure that the monumental, highly anticipated OT7 reunion of BTS in 2025 and 2026 would happen exactly as they promised to their fiercely loyal fandom. That level of staggering, unadulterated brotherhood is the exact reason why rival groups are permanently doomed to fail. They are built on fleeting, manufactured fame, while BTS is built on an unbreakable, ironclad blood covenant. When the massive, blinding stadium lights finally roared back to life for the intensely anticipated, highly emotional OT7 reunion tour in this explosive year of 2026, the sheer, undeniable reality of Jungkook's existence is absolutely terrifying to the rest of the industry. He has already conquered the entire world. He has already broken every single record conceivable to mankind. He has already fulfilled his duty to his country as an elite soldier, and yet he is still incredibly, astonishingly only in his late 20s, standing firmly in his absolute physical and vocal prime. He is the ultimate, flawless masterpiece of big hit entertainment, a terrifyingly omnipotent golden center who perfectly sings, flawlessly dances, aggressively raps, fiercely loves his brothers, and holds the entire global music industry completely in the palm of his heavily tattooed hands, making the unparalleled, unconquerable supremacy of Jungkook the absolute, final, and most devastatingly powerful reason why the towering, majestic walls surrounding these legendary kings of pop will forever remain completely unbroken, forever shutting out any arrogant contenders and cementing BTS as the ultimate, immortal titans of the 21st century.
So there you have it, the absolute, undeniable, and entirely terrifying blueprint of a global phenomenon that has completely rewritten the very laws of the music industry and permanently locked the heavy iron gates to the ultimate throne. As we stand here in the explosive, monumental year of 2026, witnessing the staggering, emotional, cultural reset of the OT7 reunion, it becomes incredibly, brutally clear why every single desperate attempt by rival agencies to genetically engineer the next BTS out of perfectly polished rookies and fierce, high-energy competitors ultimately ends up crashing violently against this impenetrable fortress. You can easily buy the most expensive, hyper-choreographed music videos, you can heavily manipulate viral streaming algorithms, and you can aggressively push incredibly talented younger groups into the brutal global arena to fiercely battle for the top spot. But you can absolutely never, ever manufacture the literal blood, the agonizing tears, and the decade-long ironclad brotherhood that was miraculously forged in the freezing, leaky basement of a nearly bankrupt agency. They survived the absolute darkest, most terrifying abysses of industry sabotage, crushing xenophobia and agonizing self-doubt, brilliantly transforming their deepest psychological scars into a universal language of healing that seamlessly binds millions of devoted fans across the entire planet into an indestructible, fiercely loyal army. The unbreakable wall surrounding them is not just made of fleeting billboard records or sold-out stadium tickets. It is built entirely from RM's visionary philosophical mind, Jin's selfless, silver-voiced sacrifices, Suga's bleeding, untamed pen, J-Hope's electrifying, unparalleled stage command, Jimin's hypnotic, gravity-defying duality, V's deep baritone magnetism, and Jungkook's terrifyingly flawless golden omnipotence. When you combine those 7 unreplicable, fiercely loyal titans into one single unified breathing entity that has actively chosen each other over unprecedented individual wealth and glory time and time again, sacrificing their solo peaks to bravely march into military boot camps just to keep a promise to their fans, you don't just get a K-pop group, you get a permanent, immortal musical empire that will absolutely outlive us all.
So, as the blinding stadium lights roar back to life and the deafening screams of the 2026 World Tour echo across the globe, we have to ask you, the viewers who have witnessed this impossible history unfold, will the global music industry ever fully recover from the absolute dominance of these 7 legends, or will every future generation of rising stars simply be forced to live permanently in their colossal, inescapable shadow? Is there truly any ceiling left in the universe for BTS to shatter? Or have they officially become the absolute unreachable sky itself? Drop your fiercest, most honest thoughts in the comments below. Absolutely obliterate that like button if you felt the chills, and make sure you are subscribed to the channel, because we are just getting started on uncovering the deepest, most heavily guarded secrets of the pop culture universe.